Good evening, I'm Klaudia Czerwińska and you're watching World News Tonight live from Warsaw. The Polish president and the foreign minister are meeting their U.S. counterparts, not together, but separately. All this against a backdrop of disputes over the shape of foreign policy between the government and the president's office. More on that in just a moment, but first, tonight's headlines. Russia and China sign a deal for the largest gas pipeline yet. Sweden and Poland join forces to safeguard against rising Russian threats at Central Europe's largest defense fair. And lessons held in shelters and escaping from bombs. This is how the school year began in Ukraine. There is no love lost between the new Polish President Karol Nawrocki and Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski, as the two are visiting the United States separately. Poland's difficult cohabitation between its centrist government and a right-wing president has now been made public as Poland's two centers of power failed to cooperate on foreign policy. Diana Skaya has more on this political impasse in her latest report.
Polish President Karol Nawrocki lands in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday, marking his first foreign visit since taking office. The following day, the official meeting between President Nawrocki and U.S. President Donald Trump will begin at the White House. But instead of unity, the trip is showcasing divisions back home over who really controls Poland's foreign policy.
It's unheard of, and it clearly indicates, and I don't think there was a reason, there was a need to do it, that there is a very significant split in Poland between the president and the government. But this is an internal matter, and there is no point to show it to the entire world.
Nawrocki, a self-styled MAGA admirer, insists he's not bound by the government's instructions for talks with Trump. He has pushed the foreign ministry to the side and is traveling to the White House without a single representative of the Polish government. To accentuate the split, Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski headed to Miami for his own talks with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who commended Poland for being the most helpful and steadfast ally best aligned with Washington. Both took part in a ceremony presenting the Lech Wałęsa Solidarity Award to Cuban opposition activist Berta Soler Fernandez.
Your government in Poland has been an extraordinary ally in the cause of liberty and freedom. There are other countries that were liberated from the yoke of tyranny and can be helpful from time to time, but there is none in the world that's been more helpful, more steadfast, and more aligned with us, including in Cuba, than the government of Poland.
And Sikorski's message is clear. Poland's foreign policy is not to be monopolized by the president.
To facilitate your work, the Council of Ministers has adopted an official position. This is to ensure that you, Mr. President, have clear guidance during your discussions. Our foremost concern is that you convey the true objectives of President Putin in Ukraine and advocate for a just peace for the Ukrainian people. Secondly, we ask that you work to prevent any reduction in the presence of American troops in Europe, particularly in Poland.
Nawrocki's agenda in Washington remains to be seen, but what is clear is that no Polish diplomats will be present for the first time in history.
The president will pursue the interests of the Polish state, as is his mandate, which he earned by winning the presidential election. There is no doubt that this mandate permits him to pursue political matters, also in the field of international politics.
For Nawrocki, the White House meeting is a high-stakes premiere on the global stage. But back home, Poland's foreign policy looks more like a tug-of-war, with the government and the president pulling in opposite directions. For TVP World, I'm Diana Skaya.
Cheap Russian gas for China and breathing space for the Russian economy. This will be the premise of a new agreement signed on Tuesday between two countries that will see the construction of the most expensive pipeline to date, known as the Power of Siberia 2. As Russia is trying to mitigate the fallout of the sanctions imposed on its energy sector, China is on a mission to become the center of a new axis of power. Maciej Wilowski takes a closer look at the consequences of this deal and brings us more in his report.
Moscow and Beijing are deepening their economic ties. A new trans-Siberian gas pipeline, named Power of Siberia 2, could soon transport cheap Russian gas to China, boosting the former's oil revenues while strengthening the latter's energy security. The planned pipeline is expected to be far longer than its predecessor and capable of transporting up to 50 billion cubic meters per year from resource-rich West Siberia to China. The parties have not yet agreed on the price tag of the project, although it will likely rank among the most expensive pipelines to date. The project was given the green light on Tuesday in Beijing during a bilateral meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping.
China and Russia have always conducted practical cooperation in various fields, including energy, on the basis of mutual respect and mutual benefit.
If and when construction is completed, the pipeline could provide a vital boost to Russia's economy, which has been slowing as the cost of waging war in Ukraine grows. Since it first invaded Ukraine, Russia has been able to finance the war in part by diversifying its energy exports away from Europe and toward markets in China, India, and the Middle East.
Russia wants to keep these investments flowing, keeps exporting the energy. Since the war in Ukraine is a war of attrition, every single push that gives some kind of a breathing space for Russian economy is highly desirable.
Days after U.S. President Donald Trump hit India with a punitive 50% tariff, Prime Minister Narendra Modi attended the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit last week to discuss economic and security matters with his Chinese and Russian counterparts. Growing trilateral cooperation between India, Russia, and China could reshape the global economic order, shifting power away from the West and toward the BRICS countries, which have long sought to present an alternative to the U.S.-led global economic order.
Conclusions from such talks can be of extreme significance for the rest of the world, and we should not underestimate that the largest countries in the world, in terms of the land, in terms of population, in terms of economy, are developing alternative world order.
While the full implications of this new pipeline are far from certain, it's clear that the push for what the Kremlin calls the multipolar world is steadily continuing. For TVP World, I'm Maciej Wilowski.
Treated once more like an international superstar than a war criminal, Vladimir Putin is enjoying special treatment upon his visit to China. And as the Russian leader basks in his own glory, shaking hands, signing international deals, and complaining about the West, Ukrainian civilians are being pummeled every day with relentless strikes. Have we arrived at a point in time where Russia's isolation is to become a distant memory? Anastasia Yanchenko went on a mission to give us an answer.
This summit seems no less warm for Putin than the one in Alaska as he hailed the unprecedented level of Russian-Chinese friendship to Xi.
Dear friend, I and the whole Russian delegation are happy about our new meeting with our Chinese friends and colleagues.
Putin also socialized with Indian Prime Minister Modi, who posted a limousine photo and praised their talks as always insightful.
If we recall how August began with a bench meeting with Alexander Lukashenko in front of 3 or 4 journalists, and how it ends with a triumph in Alaska and the Xi Jinping summit, then, of course, Vladimir Putin must be saying that these 30 days have been the best for him in the past decade.
President Xi Jinping is hosting about 20 world leaders in Tianjin, including Turkey's Erdogan, Belarus' Lukashenko, and North Korea's Kim, but also one leader from the EU, Slovakia's Robert Fico. The two-day summit seeks to showcase the East's strength against the West.
What looks to be the shapings or the early formations of World War III, as you have the more or less democratic societies in the West and the recalcitrant Eastern and very sort of autocratic leaders in the East that are sort of lining up.
Among the discussions at the summit was the war in Ukraine. The Russian president criticized the West, including the EU and NATO, for their role in the conflict and in the future security guarantees for Ukraine.
This crisis wasn't triggered by Russia's attack on Ukraine, but was a result of a coup in Ukraine which was supported and provoked by the West. I would like to note that the understandings reached at the recent Russian-American summit in Alaska Alaska are, I hope, also aimed in this direction, opening the way to peace in Ukraine.
The only EU leader present is Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico, who together with Putin condemned the recent attacks on Russian energy facilities, which halted supplies of crude to Slovakia and Hungary. Putin called on Budapest and Bratislava to respond to Ukrainian attacks and confirmed that Russia will also actively react to recent attacks on its territory.
Shut off Ukraine's gas supplies. Shut off electricity supplies. They will immediately understand that there are some limits to their behavior.
The summit takes place as another Trump deadline expired on September 1st for Putin to agree to peace talks. The process has stalled, with Russia offering no response, Trump wary of pressuring Russia, and attacks on Ukraine continuing.
Russia bombs American-owned construction facilities in western Ukraine to smithereens, and the president seems somehow mute to respond. The president likes to put himself out there as strong, as capable, and yet he's routinely spit in the face and mocked by Putin.
This report for TVP World, Anastasia Yanchenko.
The beginning of September saw Ukrainian children returning to school for the start of a new academic year despite the ongoing war. Classes are set to take place both in person and online, with many schools relying on renovated shelters to keep students safe during air raid alerts that ring louder than school bells. In Lviv, in western Ukraine, Piotr Kuchma visited a school to see how the new year has begun amid the uncertainty of war.
September 1st is one of the most important days of the year in Ukraine. It's the day when children return to school. And this is the national anthem, sung by teachers, parents and children, dressed in traditional embroidered shirts, known as vyshyvankas.
I like it. It's very nice. It's a Ukrainian holiday for all children, for parents, for teachers.
A joyful tradition, yet also a stark reminder that Ukraine's children are growing up in a country still at war. This is already the fourth school year to begin since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Svitlana and her son Danilo survived Russia's occupation of Kherson. Even after liberation, the city is constantly bombarded. That is why they now live far from the front lines, in the relative safety of Lviv.
I feel calmer here and have found a new friend.
For a child who had lived a normal, joyful, peaceful childhood to suddenly see an armed occupier riding a tank pointing weapons at people, that's terrifying. It's very scary. And we still don't know how this war and all these experiences will affect their future lives.
And when this sound goes on, classes stop and everyone must rush to the shelter. Only schools that can guarantee protection from Russian missiles and drones are allowed to remain open.
Once I got a question from the children. Teacher, tell us please, why are Polish jets taking off? They were only flying in the sky, not shooting down the Russian rockets. First of all, I was extremely surprised by the question because these were fourth graders. I told them the truth. I cannot give you the answer to this question.
It's not easy to explain this reality to young pupils. But with help from Poland, children from this school in Lviv are able to spend short holidays abroad.
Children who spent just a week abroad come back and say, we've already gotten unused to what an air raid alert is.
And with European Union support, this school itself is expanding. Nadia, the head teacher, stresses it would be impossible without that aid. Most of Ukraine's budget goes directly to the army.
At the moment, we're using hybrid learning, and to some extent, this reduces the effectiveness of education. The alarm has ended. We can return to lessons. That's very good news.
For more than 100 children at this school, it's a moment they will carry with them for the rest of their lives. It's their very first lesson. On the school grounds, children pay tribute to fathers and brothers who have fallen at the front. Piotr Kuchma, TVP World, Ukraine.
Poland and Sweden will deepen their cooperation in the Baltic Sea as well as in the field of defense technology. However, details of the nature of that cooperation are still unknown. This was agreed by the two countries' defense ministers on Tuesday at Central Europe's largest defense fair in Kielce in southern Poland. Our defense correspondent Zuzanna Jurek was there and has more.
The Kielce Military Expo serves as the center of the defense diplomacy. Each year, this is the place where a lot of the contracts pertaining to the modernization efforts as well as bolstering of the arsenal of the Polish armed forces are signed. Bilateral cooperation agreements are also signed here, and this was the case this morning when the Polish Defense Minister Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz met his Swedish counterpart, Pál Jonsson, for the signing of a strategic cooperation agreement within NATO frameworks. The two countries agreed to strengthen the ongoing cooperation, both being all too aware of the threats stemming from just outside of Poland's eastern border.
We are very close allies, and we have similar sentiments toward Russia. We know what Russia is really like. We know that it doesn't change its goals nor its ideology, which are aimed against Western civilization. And we will defend it together. We will draw on shared strength. We're proven allies, and we know that we can count on each other.
These two countries, which sit on the Baltic Sea, are all too aware of the hybrid warfare currently being waged by Russia. This includes sabotage attempts against critical infrastructure, cutting off telecommunication cables, and most recently cyber warfare, including disruptions and spoofing and jamming of GPS systems. The drone manufacturer WB Group, which is the leading drone manufacturer in Poland, talked to us about how they're addressing these issues and how they are adapting their technologies used for the drones.
We have our own solution, as well as flying in electronic warfare conditions. We have advanced frequency hopping solutions developed by our own engineers. We constantly monitor them, and because of the hundreds of thousands of hours of flight in Ukraine, we have the most knowledge where it comes to what's out there currently used, and we constantly fight it, and we constantly win against the electronic warfare, and our systems are constantly proving to be battlefield capable and superior.
But the challenges which pertain to the Baltic Sea region are not related to the sabotage attempts exclusively in terms of GPS jamming. This is also something that the Polish Armaments Group is trying to address when they've announced their Digital Baltic Defense Initiative. This will be a collaborative effort between countries in the region aiming to bolster the defenses of the critical infrastructure for the years to come. For TVP World, Zuzanna Jurek.
Reputations take a lifetime to build and seconds to destroy. That painful lesson was learned by the now infamous Piotr Szczerek, the CEO of a Polish paving company who is now known worldwide as the Cap Snatcher. Szczerek's company happens to be one of the sponsors of the Polish Tennis Association, which has now issued an exclusive statement for TVP World in response to the notorious incident. All this as the Cap Snatcher's company suffered losses and has come under attack online. Natalia Komarow reports.
By now, everyone on Earth has seen this video. The incident took place at the US Open Championship on Friday. After winning a match against Karen Khachanov, Polish tennis player Kamil Majchrzak wanted to give his cap to a young fan, unsuccessfully. After the fateful video went viral, the man who snatched the cap was identified as Piotr Szczerek, the CEO of Drogbróg, a large paving company in Poland. He has since apologized for his behavior. Szczerek is active in the Polish world of tennis, reportedly sponsoring sports programs in his hometown of Kalisz, as well as donating to the Polish Tennis Association. TVP World reached out to the association for comment.
The Polish Tennis Association has no basis for commenting publicly on the matter. The trip was entirely private. The words "sorry" are important in this situation. We appreciate the awareness and admission of error.
But while Szczerek did in fact apologize to the boy and allegedly even returned the cap to him, the online outrage continues. A company bearing a very similar name to Szczerek's has been caught in the crossfire.
This page belongs to the company Drogbróg Roman Szkaradek in Zgorzelec. We have no connection with the man in the photo, who is associated with the company Drogbróg in Błaszki. Since Saturday, we have received thousands of messages and calls regarding a matter that does not concern us.
The hyphenated Drogbrook is threatening legal action against those who spread false information, which could tarnish its good reputation. A reminder, while it is very normal to feel anger upon witnessing a grown man steal from a child, leaving hateful comments online does not help anybody. For TVP World, Natalia Komarov.
It is now time to revisit one of our top stories of today, Vladimir Putin's visit to China and the consequences this trip is going to carry moving forward, especially in the context of the war in Ukraine and European security. Tomasz Wostowski, managing partner at EU Strategies, joins me on World News Tonight to unpack the latest. Thank you so much for joining on the program.
Thanks for having me.
So, a deal was agreed about the Power of Siberia 2 pipeline, as we mentioned in the program, bigger and more expensive than before. Is this a greater victory for Putin or perhaps for Xi? Who gets more from this deal?
Well, obviously China gets more. China gets more because I think this is just a confirmation again that Russia is becoming not a puppet state, but it's becoming a junior partner to China. So that's number one. China is going to be negotiating this deal for quite a lot of time still. I mean, we have an announcement that the deal is made, but the deal is not finalized. And China is going to be negotiating the price really, really low. And we've already seen an indication that the Russian leadership has indicated that the price is going to be much lower than for Europe because of the length of the pipeline. So, of course, that's already a signal that the price is going to be very low. And it also shows, I think, it's not that Russia is a loser here, because having a signal from China and just from that meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization was important for Putin to show that, that there is an alternative version of the world. There is an alternative globally to the Western alliance, and Putin needed a signal from, I think, from his partners, from Xi and from India, that he's a valued partner and that he's able to strike deals with the, the global powers of the world, and he achieved that. So I think Xi has gained more, but Putin is also very happy.
Do you think, as we look at what's happening in China as of now, with those plus 20 leaders who are gathered there with Vladimir Putin also joining in, do you think that the West is looking at it with caution and perhaps a worry?
I think, of course, there is some concern, but I think we also have to keep things in perspective, right? I mean, the main powers of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, they don't really have that much in common in terms of having aligned global interest. Actually, they're their neighbors and their competitors, China and India, major competitors. China and Russia, for all the storytelling about the everlasting friendship and how close allies they are, they actually have a lot of conflicting interests as well. So I think for people in the West that understand the global dynamics, they understand that this is a meeting that had to take place. That signal that they're sending to the West also had to be sent, but I think they can easily count on the dynamic in the future to basically pull these partners apart. Right now they're allied against the common enemy, the West, but once that pressure eases, the tensions among them are going to come up.
Do you think that we're past the point where we're actually looking at Russia's isolation on the international stage? Do you think that Russia is back in the game, or perhaps it never left?
Well, Russia is more in the game than it was last year. I think we have to be honest about this. I mean, number one, obviously, the arrival of President Trump and the summit in Alaska, I mean, that was a clear signal that Russia, in many ways, is back. This is another step. But, that's only sort of temporary, because everything is going to depend on whether President Trump succeeds in getting any concessions from the Russians. I'm quite skeptical that it's going to materialize. And once that doesn't materialize, then again, the tensions will show up between Russia and the United States, and Russia is going to be pushed back into China's arms. And again, the more tensions there are between Russia and the West, I think the more toxic of a partner Russia becomes for everybody else. Right now, there is a moment of Putin's return just because of President Trump. So it's easier for all the other leaders to meet with him. But I think once the pressure is back on, then he's going to be shunned again.
So with the deal struck with China, I mean, the agreement that was signed, you said that there's still a long way before that materializes. Do you think that using frozen Russian assets by the West is going to be the only way to force Russia to sit by the negotiating table?
I'm going to be honest, I don't think we're ever going to confiscate the assets. to be honest. And I think the reason for that is we've already seen a lot of signals that the discussion on confiscation of Russian assets is ongoing. We see sort of the same positions being taken by literally everybody. So on the one hand, you have Belgium, which of course is the main actor here because it will be Belgium that will be confiscating the bulk of these assets. Belgium, for a number of reasons, is against it. A number of other countries, Poland, the Baltics, and so on, are quite in favor. But I think there's a stalemate. And this stalemate has been going on for many, many months, and we don't see any more detailed discussions of what exactly can be done to unfreeze those assets. So I think the threat of confiscation of Russian assets is going to be hanging over Russia. I think it's a bargaining chip, but I think it's extremely unlikely they're actually going to be confiscated. But that said, I think they're going to be used in some way. So whatever happens at the end of the war, those assets probably are never going to make their way back to Russia. They're going to be used in some ways for the reconstruction of Ukraine, for the funding of those projects. So something's going to happen to those assets that will help resolve all the damages from the war, but I don't think they're actually going to be confiscated.
Robert Fico, Slovakian Prime Minister, is the only EU leader present in China, and I wanted to bring a quote from him. A new world order is being created, new rules of a multipolar world, a new balance of power, which is extremely important for stability in the world. Being part of such discussions means supporting dialogue and not acting like a sulking little child. This is how the EU and its representatives behave today. Some very interesting words from Mr. Fico. What games is Mr. Fico playing, and does he think that it'll be beneficial for his country in the long run?
Well, I think it's difficult to say. I mean, obviously, he's trying to mimic what Viktor Orban's been doing, right? So he's trying to position himself somewhere between the EU and Russia, and to show that he's not so sort of one-sided.
Successfully?
So far, no. But I think that's, he's taking a long bet. He's taking a long bet, as Orban is. They're taking a very long bet that one way or another, when this war is over, they will be rewarded. And I think the bet is not bad, I think, if you think about it strategically. I mean, at some point, the war is going to be over, and some way they're going to be rewarded. Of course, they're suffering massive, I think, costs towards their partners in the EU. The relationship between Hungary and a lot of countries in the EU is ruptured, seriously ruptured. It's going to be difficult to repair it. But I think the broader point that Fico made, he's not wrong. I mean, there is a new, the balance of power is shifting in the world. The East is definitely on the rise. The importance of the West is slowly declining. So, the general point he's making is correct, that we do have to be, I think, open and accept that there are new global powers coming to play. However, the short term, he's going to lose. Long term, we don't know, but we don't know if he's going to be in power to cash his check at the end.
So in his speech on the war in Ukraine, Vladimir Putin not only showed his maximalist demands on full display, but he also pushed against NATO's expansion, branding it as a root cause, I quote, of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. And he said, quote, in order for a Ukrainian settlement to be sustainable and long-term, the root causes of the crisis, which I have just mentioned and which I have repeatedly mentioned before, must be eliminated. Are we back to square one after Alaska?
We're not back to square one. I mean, I think Putin has been negotiating all this time. And I think this is for people who know Russia very well and have written about this extensively, this is a classical Russian position. So you take an extreme position and you stick to it no matter what. And then at the very, very end, you basically you concede or you go for compromises. So this is not really, I think, anything new. Putin's been saying the same thing for quite a while. Everybody that had anything to do with the relationship between Russia and the West acknowledges that what Putin says is simply not true. I mean, the expansion of NATO to the east and so on, it hasn't been really a violation of any agreements that were supposedly made because they weren't made any agreements. So, in essence, Putin is trying to shake the Western alliance, and let's be honest, he's quite successful in it. The relationship between the EU and the US is not what it was. So, he's poking and trying to find the weak spots in the Western alliance, and what he says about the root causes and the expansion of NATO to the east, he's trying to poke holes in it. And let's be honest as well. The United States is slowly withdrawing, right? I mean, they're focusing on China, and Europe needs to step up. So in some ways, he's, I think, achieving what he wants, which is less U.S. in Europe, and that probably is where we're going anyway.
And as a final question, do you think it was a wise move to slap those tariffs on India and have it get closer to China and Russia? What is your opinion on this? I mean, we've seen Mr. Modi, who is getting closer to China than before.
Mr. Modi is not getting closer to China. He's pretending to be getting closer to China, and I think people who know the relationship
I'm glad you clarified.
between China and India know that he's not getting close. But of course, Trump miscalculated. He thought Modi is going to cave in and stop, or at least make some promises not to buy Russian crude. He hasn't succeeded, but in the long term, they're going to resolve this issue.
Thank you very much. Tomasz Wostowski, Managing Partner at EU Strategies, was my guest. Pleasure to have you in the studio. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And so this would be all the latest news for now here on World News Tonight. I'm Klaudia Czerwińska. Thank you so much for joining, and we hope to see you back here on TVP World in just a moment.